Our world continues to change and push us in ways we have not been challenged before. On this show, we talk about these challenges, how to be aware of them, face them, and overcome them in your life. This is David Waldas, creator of the Aligned Living System.
And I'm Nick Musica, Aligned Living Coach. Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Aligned Living System podcast. I'm David Waldas here with Nick Musica. And today's topic is the world ready to be able to see through the illusion and focus on what's really happening rather than all the distractions out there? And of course, we're going to look at that through the lens of energy. We're going to look at that through the lens of personal responsibility versus distraction. And I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. So welcome, Nick. How are you doing?
Good morning, David. I'm doing pretty darn well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's so fun trying to, not trying, but as we tap in and pick the topics for the week's podcast, there's so much distraction going on out there, and it's force fed to us everywhere. It was funny. I was I was at I forget, somewhere where they, the kind of place where they always play like the news, and instead of having the news on, they had like the nature channel. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. I don't know if it was the airport or I forget where I even was, but it was like, one of those places where you're in a waiting room, or in a waiting area, and you're always just like trying to, what it was? I was at a hotel, and so in the morning, you go and sit there and have their breakfast, and there's like whatever news channel they think that everybody should be listening to is like blasting.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
Yeah, it is.
I think I'm just gonna take my food and go back up to my room. But instead they had the nature channel on. And I was like, oh my God, like this is nice. I wasn't even watching it, but just listening to the sounds of the animals, and you might be able to relate to that. But I was like, God, it was so nice of a contrast, but it also reminded me of like, we're just force fed. Like if we're out places, like it's just blasting us, whether it's through our phones or wherever, all this distraction, all this, there's something wrong, all the worst things that are going on. And it makes it so easy for that to be our baseline, so easy for that to be what we're putting our energy into and what we think is the reality. And it's not that those things aren't going on, but what role do we play in it, and where is our personal responsibility in it? And when I talk to people that are, in a traditional mindset, they say, your personal responsibility is to get out there and talk to people about what's going on and to, to get upset basically about it, to, to change people's minds. But we don't see people's minds changing, right? We see people just becoming more polarized, like all the topics that are intentionally brought to the surface are ones that are always going to be polarizing, that are not going to bring people together, but are going to bring people apart. And so when we look at the idea of, the motivation is the exact same, right? People go, I want more unity. I want a better world for all of us. I want there to be more love and more caring and, more positivity and a world that I want to live in. And so then we think, if we were to look at our current strategy for that, are we contributing to the chaos, or are we realizing that that's a big game and that there's a kind of a trick happening here, and that it's kind of a scam happening, and that we actually can do so much more by listening to the nature channel instead of the news channel, by bringing an energy that engages people in humanity rather than in, arguments and into separation. And it doesn't, we think it has to be about the topics that are the hot button items that we're handed. But when we can bring ourselves into a situation and bring our energy where it's actually inclusive and people don't even know what our political stance is, or don't even know, what our thoughts are, but feel us as humans and engage with us, how much more does that do for people's sense of humanity than it does to get into this right and wrong type of an argument or a type of a discussion that's not really a discussion? And so that's been, election time, right? And so it's, it's force fed at another level. And to me, it's like I've never been less interested in what's happening, like ever. And I think it's
Hmm.
just more and more clear to me of, you know, I want to be impactful and in a positive way. And, I talk to a lot of people that, are very spiritual or very, energetically aware, and they say, I'm actually, I'm going to look at this through a conscious lens, or I'm going to do this from a positive place, but the bait's just too strong, right? Like we can't help but lose our alignment when we're engaging in, the things that are just so obviously put in front of us so that we can recognize that things are very, very wrong and things
Hmm.
are very, very not okay. And it's just massive bait. And it's always just hand selected items to make us feel that way.
Hmm. It's the equivalent of, I'm going to give another effort to get a sponsor. It's the equivalent of like when you have a really
Anti-effort.
clean diet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you have a really clean diet, right? You're
I feel
doing all the right
McDonald's in our
things.
future.
And then you drive by and you just smell it, and your childhood good feels or trauma. I don't know how it's tied to everyone. But those French fries, man, and you just and then is there anything else you would like other than the French fry? Well, while I'm here, yeah. And then you just get all the things that you've missed since you're 12. And then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
put them in your 40 or 50-year-old body, and then you feel like complete shit.
yeah,
Uh like so you can do your meditation in the morning, you can do your journaling, you can do your good work and get in front of people and say the good things. And then you take a break and you look at your phone and you're like, mother effer, right? Like the world's falling apart. Ukraine, Trump,
yeah.
the presidential election, the
Hezbollah, yeah,
environment,
yeah, yeah.
all like, yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
like we could create a list.
Yeah, there is one.
Like,
Like, here's the things of what's
yeah,
wrong.
right, right. There's no shortage of them. There's no shortage. So like, how do you? It's. I mean, you were chatting, and I'm thinking this is a values conversation, and this is
Mhm.
a vibrational conversation.
But it's an effectiveness conversation, right? And
It's
this is
an
the part where
effectiveness.
things
Yeah.
flip around. People go, "Oh, all these spiritual people that go, oh, I don't want to know about the news. I don't want to know about this." And there's like this bypassing. And I used to buy into that and go like, yeah, people need to like get their shit straight and know what's important, right? And absolutely. And I think there was a time when having conversations was effective. I think there was a time when people had open-mindedness and wanted to be educated. But the political system has dialed in their communication so powerfully now to create such division, to create such
Yeah.
hot button topics that that's no longer available to us.
Yeah.
And so, what does it look like to get involved now? Well, maybe it's not about getting involved in politics. Maybe it's not about getting involved in any of that stuff that's just going to play out how it's going to play out, but it's about bringing more humanity. It's about bringing more of ourselves and our connections and showing
Yeah.
up in a way where people can feel us and see us and forcing people to have to realize that there's a human sitting next to them. And that
Yeah.
kind of connection, I think is the answer, much more so than getting into a divisive conversation with somebody or getting upset within ourselves. And now our humanness doesn't feel good, and who's going to want to connect with that anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
other than
I
to
mean,
argue.
I remember hearing somewhere in the political landscape, I forget where I heard it, who said it, but they were talking about it wasn't about parties, it was about
Hmm.
ideas.
Hmm.
And the party with the best ideas, like the votes would sort of float over there. And I
Hmm.
want to say that's true. I don't know. My recall is not well good enough to validate that one way or the other. But let's assume that's a real thing, because it would be lovely if it is. I feel like we're talking about the same thing now, where it's, let's not talk about the things that are divisive. Let's talk about the ideas that are good.
Hmm.
And it's way easier to go fatty, sugary food, immediate response from it, right? And like we get triggered, we have chemical reactions internally. The world has, like, talk about biohacking, right? Like
Mhm.
so much media biohacking, the Instagrams, the pick your favorite news channel, CNN, Fox,
Mhm.
whatever. They're all doing the same thing from this perspective, right?
Mhm.
Then
Mhm.
the Weather Channel, right? Like if like even watching the Weather Channel or something that's actually relevant to you, right? They will build it up and they'll go after this commercial break, and you're like, there's a storm coming in the next hour, and you just had me hang on
You
for the
may
next
have
two.
to evacuate. We'll be back
Oh,
in two
right.
minutes. Yeah.
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 You're like, are you kidding me? Like that seems
Yeah.
you should have led with that. I mean, this is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And but they don't. They don't
No,
lead
it's
with
a big
that, right?
game. Big game.
It's a big game, right? And so um pack your shit up, put it in the car, and then have the conversations of what's important as you're driving away from the storm, right? Because it's just gonna flood everything. But
Or
the
just
idea
flip it and
of
put the nature channel on. And
put the nature channel on, yeah, instead of having everything coming at you. So the idea of like what's a good idea to talk about,
mm,
and the conversation we're having, um, people sort of don't want to talk about it a lot compared to the other ones,
mhm.
and folks who are willing to talk about it, sometimes they're shy to talk about it, and other people are more than willing to who have zero experience in it, just hammer it like it's a nail and put it down.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember Tom Brokaw, newscaster from
Yeah.
80s basically, right? Really solid, like you trustworthy, it felt like somebody who cared. And I
Hmm.
remember he was doing this piece in Afghanistan. And it was before, I think it was before the Gulf Wars and stuff. But he was there talking to these kids and they were like climbing on him and they were all excited to see this, American white guy there. And they were talking about how they hated Americans. And Tom goes, "But I'm an American." And they go, "Oh, no, 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 we know you. We know you, so that's different. We hate Americans, but you're different because we know you." And I would like that stuck with me. I mean, that was how many years ago, but it really stuck with me, this idea that we hate what we don't know. And so like how are we going to change by having a conversation with the kids that have heard since they were about this evil empire that's going to try to destroy Afghanistan, or is a conversation through humanity, through connection, through feeling each other and going, oh well, turns out I don't hate you. Interesting. Okay, so what do I do with that now? And that piece of like, and I've seen it many times when people have a conversation with somebody that isn't about their belief system, but it's about who they are and their sense of self and their humanity, really. And then all of a sudden there's like this bond, and people are so proud of it, like, I have a friend who's a Republican, or I have a friend who's a Democrat. It's like it's like right of honor,
It's
It's
true.
almost like, like I have a friend who's a person of color, it's like
Yeah.
these things that are
Someone
just
who's
like,
not like me who I happen to get along with. Isn't that
yeah,
wonderful? Hmm.
yeah. And it's not about ideas, it's about humanity, it's about connection. And so, you know, the moment we bring it into these traps, it's about division.
Yeah.
And when we can allow ourselves to be in that vulnerable place where we let people see us and we invite other people to be seen and we show up in a real, real way and in an energetically aligned way and in a way that feels good to be around, right? Because when you're telling somebody they're wrong, you don't feel good to be around. And nothing good happens from that. And when somebody's telling you how you should be, they don't feel good to be around, and nothing good's going to come from that. And what if we actually focus on how does it feel to be around me? How does it feel what is the energy leaving me? And if the energy leaving me is saying you're wrong, like divisiveness, like it's not going to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there's an interesting thing I've seen happen so many times with Aligned Living clients. There's this one guy I was thinking of. And we were working with this idea of how does the energy feel leaving me, right? And he was engaging with his brother who he hadn't talked to in very much in years. And we talked about the idea of not needing people to be different. Because when we're focused on how is the energy leaving me, rather than how is somebody else's energy coming into me, if we don't like the way they feel, we need them to be different. And the moment that is the experience of, I need this person to be different, I need them to feel different, I need them to think different, I need them to do different, there's a energetic communication that happens that is very uncomfortable that people feel even if they don't know they're feeling it. And there's instantly shutdown, there's defensiveness, there's animosity, all these things happen. And our world is structured that way now to make sure that that is our experience with each other. And what this client found was his he was having this conversation with his brother and feeling how his personal energy felt as it left him as he talked with his brother. And his brother all of a sudden started opening up about stuff from their childhood, sharing things that he'd always hoped his brother would share with him. And the conversation was different. He's like, it blew him. Like, I don't even know what happened. I'm like, you didn't need your brother to be different. You were focusing on how you felt and that positive energy you were bringing to the communication, into the interaction. Your brother could feel that, and for the first time, he felt you not needing him to be different. And when that happened, he became safe. He opened up. He entered his humanity, and he saw you in a different light, felt you in a different way, and there was connection and openness and safety and expression and love that couldn't exist when you needed him to be different. And we walk through the world needing the world to be different, which means we're always out there sending this energy into the world that goes, nope, not like that, not like that. No, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Versus, I'm going to send this beautiful energy out that is about the energy leaving me. And it opens up this dialogue. It opens up this energetic dialogue, this connection that says, um, I don't need you to be different. Whether I agree with you or not, I don't need you to be different. And the moment we feel that or somebody else feels that, they open up and they it's a different engagement. It's humanity, it's connection. And we can't connect when we need other people to be different at that level.
Yeah. So then at the root of all this is the agreement that humanity is important, having those emotions and humanity is important, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
the starting point.
Yeah, like honoring the person as a human over political bias or whatever, like,
Yeah.
or like their ideas or how they show up or if they're angry or not. If somebody's angry around you and you're feeling their anger, you're going to respond to them in kind, either protection or needing them to be different in some way.
Yeah.
But if they're
Yeah.
angry around you and you don't tap into that and you just bring this loving energy, their anger is going to shift around you. And they're going to like,
Yeah.
oh, I finally found the one person I don't need to be a dick to. Great. I get to be nice to this person. That's kind of fun because the
Yeah.
rest of the world doesn't like me. And so I'm going to be a dick to all of them, but not you. Like, you're special. But we're just not engaging in that feedback loop of there's something wrong with you. Yeah, no, no, there's something wrong with you. And that
Yeah.
is the world we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
So then how would you suggest when someone's hearing this, they're going, yep, I see it, I get it. And we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
Of like that person's the problem, not my perspective of that person is the problem, right? But when
Mm-hmm.
we change our perspective and we're still met with harshness or anger or those other things and we don't meet on level playing field, how would you work through that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I think it starts with this idea, that we have to give ourselves permission to go, yeah, I do think they're wrong, but it doesn't matter. And they think I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter because everybody has all these different facets of themselves. And somebody that can be the biggest dick in the world can also be the most beautiful, loving person in the world. They just need the exact right circumstances to bring that out in them. And so, do we care what their normal operating system is, or do we care what we're able to bring and what that elicits from another person? And so the idea of, trying to sort it out, like, yeah, there's a lot of people that if I thought about it and I looked at them, I go, oh, that person's a complete dick. I want nothing to do with them. But if I'm sitting next to them on a subway or on a plane or something, I know I can hold my energy in a way where they are going to actually, I see it like a die with like 100 sides to it, that flips around and goes, oh, this is the side that matches what's happening here. And I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to be a jerk. I don't need to be abrasive. I can actually soften up and show this part of me that never gets to come out. And how beautiful does that feel for that person? And it fosters a relationship with themselves to go, you know what? Sometimes I'm not a dick. What an interesting feeling to actually allow that. Um, and how powerful is that? Did I answer your
Yes.
question?
I think so. I think so. And I think there could be some limits as well of like I if I show up with this intention
Mhm, mhm,
and and I'm not met in kind. Like
Hmm.
there needs to be a recognition at some point, possibly where
Hmm. Hmm.
um
Hmm.
the where it's just not the right time, not the right situation, not the right, and so
Yeah. And so
it
what? Right? Like we recognize it, and so what? Like, does it mean that we need then it's boundaries, right?
yes,
It's not about
yeah,
us doing something different. Like some people are just like gonna cling to their anger. And so
that's right,
what?
yeah, yeah, but
And they're
but
outliers, I would say.
yeah, and so to recognize where good effort is and double downing on things because like
Hmm.
I think there could be a knee-jerk reaction of, well, I tried it, David. Well, how long did you
Hmm.
try it for? 5, 6 seconds. It was
Hmm.
forever,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like, well, it may not, you may need a little bit more resilience and stick to itiveness in the situations because we are all so willing to stand up and, put ourselves in the ring sort of against each other. And
Yeah.
once we realize we're not in the ring, well, then that's a different conversation. But that it could take a little while for that realization uh, to occur
Hmm.
because, as you stated, we're, we're sort of conditioned to perceive the world in the opposite or
Hmm.
not like me in that sense.
Yeah. Unless we find somebody like us and then we can go, oh, we can huddle together now and go, yeah, us, not them. But we don't say that. We just go, oh, it's so good to meet somebody that also gets it, you
And
know?
what a dangerous echo chamber that is at the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm so glad I found someone who's going to agree with all the things I'm going to say,
And we're in the
right?
same algorithm. This is great. Yeah.
This is fantastic. Oh, you like that thing too? Me too. You didn't like it
Yeah.
for these reasons? Me too.
Yeah. Can you believe
Yeah.
them? Can you believe that? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing too, is like, what if it doesn't matter how people respond to us too? What if, and this is one of the things I found a bunch, and I mean, I know it myself, is when I allow that to be my priority, the energy leaving me, what does it take in order to do that? It takes me being in a good place, me being in an aligned place, me in a place where I feel good, and now I can generate that energy. And so, what if it doesn't matter how people respond to it? Because, what is our user experience? Our user experience says, I feel freaking good. But what if I try it and somebody else doesn't respond and they don't shift into that facet of themselves that's loving? So what? I mean, it's different if it's our inner circle, then we got to really get clear about that. Like, is this what I want around me?
Yeah.
But also, so what? Like, if our intention is to get them to shift versus our personal responsibility to ourselves and our own energy, like there's gonna be times it doesn't work. And if we use that as a reason to not do it versus a reason like, you know what, that didn't work. That person's still a dick, but I feel pretty freaking great, right?
It's true. Yeah.
So what is my user experience? My user experience is whatever I place my awareness on.
Yeah.
And if I go like I tried this, I sent loving energy to that dick, and he actually became more of a dick. Like now I have a right to be angry. Like I have a right to be like, fuck that guy, fuck him, right? Like he didn't take this opportunity to feel good, and so I'm gonna feel bad because fuck him, right?
Right. Versus being versus being okay with the outcome of the situation because of how you showed up.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
like, wow, that person's really stuck. Even when I brought this beautiful energy, they doubled down on being a dick.
Yeah.
God, that's good. That's a hard sentence that they're running. That's a hard way to live.
Yeah. Yeah. So empathy.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd say it even goes beyond this. And this is kind of a tricky thing that on the inside of the container of aligned living, it makes perfect sense, but to just talk about it on the podcast, it's a little tricky, and I'll try saying it anyways. But the idea of and this is it's not as literal as it sounds, but what's in it for me, right? And
Yeah.
so when our intention is to make the world a better place and make people feel good, like we also have to ask the question of how do I feel? Like what's in it for me? Like can I feel good in this situation? And when we let that be the leading part of it is, and again, another way of saying that is like, am I in alignment? Am I running my energy clean and clear? Am I in my truth or am I caught up in a battle? And when I'm in this clarity, I can let the energy lead me in that way, and it feels great. And what's in it for me? I feel great, regardless of the way people are responding to it. And I'm deep in my own personal responsibility to my surroundings, to the rest of the world, but a deep in responsibility to myself. And when it starts with that question of, what's in it for me? Well, I need to make my user experience fantastic.
Yeah,
I
that's
need to
right.
get really clear and then bring that to the world. And by asking the question, what's in it for me first, does this feel fantastic to be me right now? Um, there's a payoff, my immediate experience of being inside my own inner reality. And then I get to bring that. That's really where the motivation starts. Because if we need the world to respond to us the way we want them to respond to us, like we're going to be
Mm-mm.
sacrificing this inner world always. And so we got to ask first, how am I setting this up for me? And the
Yeah.
good news is when we set it up for us, like the positive impact we have on the outer world and that connection with humanity, that like regardless of people's belief systems, like it cuts through it because it feels good to be around us.
Yes. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is my own inner system. I'm hearing my capacity
Mhm.
to do what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, and there's also to some degree, right place, right time in terms of severity. Like if you have a high capacity, the more
Mhm.
challenging situation, you'll have capacity to that situation. If you have a
Yeah.
lower capacity, um, more challenging situations may not be the best place to build these skills, these
Mhm.
muscles, this
Yeah.
alignment, right? Because we're
Yeah.
talking about the consistency of it, not the moments of it, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
moments tied together
Yeah. The aligned living
equals
versus
the
the aligned moments. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you can build on those moments, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden those dots are way closer. Now it's just a
Yeah.
stream, right? It's just
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
solid line.
Hmm.
But until you can get that capacity built up and get that muscle memory, so to speak,
Hmm.
it can be challenging. So
Hmm.
let's. I mean, if we all agreed to start that, like, what if the whole world agreed to start to be a little more humane to each other, to
Yeah.
be a
Or
little
humane
more
to
patient,
themselves, right? How do I want to feel
or
in here? If I started with that,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
and people, want to say it's about others, but it's because they. I mean, this is controversial to even talk about, but when it comes down to it, we're always motivated by what it feels like in here. And if we don't like something out there, we're motivated because of the way it feels in here. If we like
Yeah,
something out there, we're motivated because of how it feels in here. And so if
totally.
we're just that level of honesty with ourselves and go, I'm going to start with how it feels in here, and I know that creates beautiful things out there, but I got
Yeah.
to start in here.
Yeah. I mean, this is a basic like there's a Rorschach test.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's right, it's ink on a page, it's been folded over, like it's sort of symmetric, mostly symmetrical. And it's a old, I don't even know if it's used anymore, but it's an old psych test. And the
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
question is, well, what do you see? It's not
Mm-hmm.
what do
Yeah.
you think other people see? It's what do
Yeah.
you see? Right.
Yeah.
And if you start seeing uh bats and dragons versus butterflies and birds, like it's a different conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You may see the same, two people are not going to see the same thing, or maybe they will, but
Mm-hmm.
how you perceive it is that internal experience. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And how real do you take it? It was interesting. There was a study done, I forget, I think it was like at Harvard or Yale, and they were showing they basically put people in a booth, and I think it was dark and they had a screen and they showed them images and they hooked them up to like basically monitoring their vital signs and how their body physiologically responded. And what they found is that the more conservative people were, the more like playing it safe they were, the more they saw the images as real. Like a spider pops up and they would respond physiologically the way they would if they
Oh
saw a
yeah,
real spider. And
right.
somebody that wasn't quite so conservative, they tended to look at the picture and go, it's a picture of a spider, and their physiology didn't respond in the same way. And so, like to me, it was such an indicator of threat, right? The more we feel like threats are alive, even if they're not real, like we're gonna shut things down. We're gonna be a lot more defensive. We're gonna
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
lot more, like protective. We're gonna be a lot less open and feeling safe and loving because there's some real dangers out there.
Yes. Where most things are just simply not that dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. And so for the empaths, that walk around the world tapped into all that, that is the experience, right? And
Yeah.
so, like, I mean, that's where the aligned living work changes everything from the beginning is we go, don't tap into that, tap into this. Well, I don't know how to do that. I've been trying to do that, but it just keeps coming at me. Like, well, here's some
Yeah.
simple tools. Like, go get the free video course.
Oh
It will
man.
give you those tools from the beginning to go, oh, that is out there. So it's not in here. So that's not a threat. Now I can actually bring what's in here out there instead of bringing what's out there in here. And that
Yeah.
changes everything. And it's instant. It's like, boom, done. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see how this lands for folks. But so every time I go in the water and I'm wearing a wetsuit, I got to rinse it off and,
mhm,
make sure it dries well. And, and it seems like, the inside of the wetsuit faced
mhm.
outward is sort of what we're talking about. Like
Yeah, yeah.
those are our inside nerves that are just like
Hmm.
plugging into the outside world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is overly simplified, but also accurate, I think.
Hmm.
You turn that wetsuit right side in,
Hmm.
and that's what you're talking about. Like it's really it's like, oh, it's just upside down. It's just
Yeah, yeah,
inside
yeah.
out,
Yeah,
right?
I'm just giving the world 90% of access to me instead of 10%. And
Yeah,
myself 10% access to me instead of 90%. So we just flip
right.
the 1090 and go, oh, instead of reading the world in such an intense way that it feels like me, that it feels like reality.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, yeah, have you ever considered driving the car in drive and not reverse? Right? It makes a world of difference.
Yeah, but we have no
But
idea. Like when I got that download in 2016, my whole world flipped, and I was like, "Oh my God, this world is it's not dangerous anymore emotionally. Like I can walk into a situation and
wow,
have
yeah.
tools to be able to be in charge of how I feel,
Yeah.
for the most part, right? Like we all have our perfect bait that gets us to flip the wetsuit back out, to flip our awareness back out and go, "Oh shit, like let me tap into that."
Yeah.
Um, but when we lead with ourselves and utilize those tools to do it, it's instant and it changes everything. And it is as mechanical as flipping the wetsuit, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there
I
is
mean,
a
it is
joke in there too about the cold Pacific Ocean and how much it makes you have to pee when you get in it, but we'll leave that alone.
I mean it is remarkable. Like I was speaking for myself, like trying to learn a new skill and like banging my head against it and trying to do it where someone just comes along and go, well, what are you doing? You just do it a little bit like this, and you go, I had all the right tools.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I had
put
these
together the
gifts,
time.
they got hijacked. Yeah,
Yeah, I put together the time. I knew this. I knew what was wrong. I knew what the outcome I was going for. I just sort of didn't really know how to
yeah,
get there.
yeah.
Um, and then someone just comes along and just sort of goes, oh, just piece the two things together. It looks like that.
Mhm.
Oh shit,
Yeah.
really that easy? It
Hmm.
is. I mean, you got to practice doing it. Like now, do it yourself.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Learn to
and we'll do
sustain
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll run a few cycles together, and like we'll be there. We'll help you out. But
Hmm. Hmm.
that easy, that easy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's fun. It's exciting. Like, and it is that simple. And that's the part I think that's hard for people to wrap their head around is that it is mechanical, right? When we're reading the outside world, there's a part of us, these cameras and microphones that are on it. And
Mm,
if they're not on it, we don't read the world that way, right?
hmm.
And it plays inside us, those speakers and the screens are in here. And so if the world's playing in here, of course it's always a threat. But what if we took those cameras and microphones, put them on ourselves, and the screens are still in here, and we're still aware of what's going on out there? Maybe it's like a 10% of the security cameras are on out there, but
Yeah,
90% here, the world just feels different. And then
yeah,
we can focus on how does it, now that we're placing our awareness on ourselves, now we can feel how we're showing up and bring that and
right.
let that be the change agent instead of being out there trying to make everybody else different and needing them to be different because it just controls our inner world so much and how we feel.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the basis of aligned living. And it, those tools that are in that free video class, put you well down the road.
yeah, yeah. Take
Yeah,
take a look, take a listen, spend some time with the tools. Changes things.
it does. It does. Awesome. Well, great conversation. Always so interesting and timely, I guess, right?
And good connect on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know our schedules have been so crazy and busy that we're fitting in here on a Saturday morning, but great to connect. And thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast. And if you did, please subscribe so you can catch the next episode. If you want to learn more about the Aligned Living System and how it could support you in your life, check out davidwaldas.com.